Hello and welcome, dear students. Today we are going to discuss about an important concept in the field of teaching and learning, and that is programmed learning. After working through this, you should be able to know the origin of programmed learning. To understand the concept of programmed learning in the light of various definitions, to know the various characteristics of programmed learning, to understand the basic principles of programmed learning, and to analyze the various steps of programming. Now, origin of programmed learning. Programmed learning is the gift of educational psychology to the modern world for programming the instructional process to cater the individual differences and making the process of learning more effective. The origin of programmed learning is not essentially new. Socrates may be regarded as one of the earliest programmers who developed a program in geometry. It was recorded by Plato in the dialogue Meno. Socrates used it to guide his followers to knowledge by conducting them conversationally along a path from fact to fact and insight to insight. The method of programmed learning, or programmed instruction as it is often called today, emerged in the efforts of American psychologists during the second decade of the present century. E.L. Thorndike, 1874-1949, was the first psychologist whose findings bear direct relevance to programming. Programmed learning is directly related to the law of effect, as explained by Thorndike. Sidney L. Prissy, a psychologist of Ohio State University, is credited for developing in the middle 1920s practical machines which could teach as well as test. The teaching machines, as developed by Prissy, present a series of questions to the student and inform him immediately whether his response is right or wrong. In 1943, B.F. Skinner and his two other colleagues started programming by teaching a pigeon to roll a small bowling ball by operant conditioning. By 1954, Skinner and James G. Holland devised the auto-instructional methods, which have served the present generation as the basis for present work in programmed instruction. According to him, the purpose of programmed learning is to manage human learning under controlled conditions. Now, some important definitions and concept of programmed learning. Programmed learning represents the one of the highly individualized and systematic instructional strategy in classroom instruction as well as self-learning. It is the method of giving individualized instruction in which the student is active and proceeds at his own pace and is provided with immediate knowledge of results. It will be imperative to mention some noteworthy definitions as given by great educationists and psychologists. Harold W. Bernard. Programmed learning refers to the arrangement of instructional material in progressive sequences. L. William. Programmed instruction is the process of arranging the material to be learned in a series of small steps which are designed to lead a student through self-instruction from what he knows to the unknown of new and more complex knowledge and principles. Smith and Moore. Programmed learning is the process of arranging the material to be learned in a series of sequential steps. Usually, it moves the student from a familiar background into a complex and net set of concepts, principles, and understandings. Gulati and Gulati. Programmed learning is popularly a method of giving individual instruction in which the student is active and proceeds at his own pace and is provided with immediate knowledge of results. Susan Markle. Programmed learning is a method of designing a reproducible sequence of instructional events to produce a measurable and consistent effect on behavior of each and every acceptable student. In the light of these definitions, it can be concluded that programmed learning is a method of individualized instruction in which the student receives information relating to his own needs and progressive sequences, but in small units. In a sense, programmed learning is a method which makes effective use of programmed books, language laboratory, teaching machines, films, radio, television, tape recorder, and a teacher. Now, some important characteristics of programmed learning. 1. Individualized instruction. Programmed learning is the method of receiving individualized instructions from a variety of sources like programmed textbooks, teaching machines, computers, with or without the help of teacher. Information is presented according to individual needs. Second, logical sequence of material. The subject matter of programmed learning is presented into logical sequence of small steps. By producing in small steps, the possibility of committing error is eliminated. Third, interaction between the learner and the program. In programmed learning, interaction between the learner and the program is emphasized. Thus, programmed learning requires that the learner should be active. Immediate knowledge of results. Programmed learning provides immediate knowledge of results. At each step, the student is informed of how well he is doing. He immediately knows whether his answer to a question is right or wrong. Organized nature of knowledge. Programmed learning emphasized the organized nature of knowledge because it requires the continuity between the easier concepts and the difficult ones. Learner's own speed. In programmed learning situation, the learner moves at his own speed. Thus, learning takes place at individual rather than general rates. Constant evaluation. In a programmed material, constant evaluation is possible by the record of students' responses. It is possible to improve the quality of programmed materials through checking the number of errors at each step. Thus, students' progress may be evaluated by looking into the various types of responses produced by the learner. Now, some basic principles of programmed learning. The fundamental principles of programmed learning are: 1. Principle of small steps. This principle is based on the basic assumption that one learns better if the content matter is presented to him in suitable small steps. Therefore, according to this principle, a programmer, while preparing a program, should try to arrange the subject matter into properly sequenced meaningful segments of information called frames. These segments should be presented one at a time before the learner for responding. Second, principle of active responding. This principle is based on the assumption that a learner learns better by being active. The student learns better and faster when they are actively participating in the teaching learning process. The teaching learning process should be such active that the learner should not feel difficulty in moving from one frame to another and remains busy and active by responding to the frames. Third, principle of immediate reinforcement. The student learns best if his answer is confirmed immediately. Immediate confirmation serves as a kind of motivation or reinforcement. Principle of self-pacing. In programmed learning, each student can proceed at his own rate. Some students naturally learn more rapidly or more slowly than others. The student can learn very effectively if he learns at his own pace. The principle is based on individual differences in the process of teaching and learning. Principle of evaluation. Constant evaluation is another fundamental principle of programmed learning. It helps students to learn and grasp the material given in each frame. The purpose of this arrangement is not to test the student, but to improve the quality of programmed material through checking the number of errors at each step. Now, important steps involved in programmed learning. 1. Topic selection. The programmer should select the most familiar topic. Otherwise, he has to take the help of subject expert. He may confine himself to selecting a specified content or a small area of the subject matter. Second, content outlines. After topic selection, its outlines may be prepared, which should cover all the materials one plans to teach. For this, the programmer has to refer to and examine relevant books and materials. Next, instructional objectives. The instructional objectives must be formulated, which involves both test descriptions and task analysis. The former is the description of terminal behavior which the learner is expected to achieve, and the latter is the series of component behavior that he is required to acquire in the process of achieving terminal behavior. The instructional objectives should be written in behavioral outcomes. Next is entry skill. The learner should have some prerequisite ability and skill to understand properly the new program. This background experience is called the entry skill, and a suitable program cannot be prepared without proper assessment of the entry skill. To prepare a program adequately, target-oriented entry skill data should be utilized at this stage. Then, presentation of the materials. Suitable format is to be decided for presenting the material from the educational point of view. Then, the programmed material should be presented in a sequence of frames arranged as steps towards terminal behavior. Next is student participation. On analysis of the terminal behavior, one will find the critical responses of the students. Of course, it is related to some part of the subject matter. The overt responses facilitate student learning. Students' participation is facilitated by presenting the program in an interesting format. Next is terminal behavior test. The effect of program can be ascertained by administering the terminal behavior test, also known as performance assessment. This provides feedback to the program and shows the effectiveness of the instructional materials. It may also serve as an entry skill data for the next program on a related topic or higher levels. Next is revision. Lastly, the program may be reviewed on the basis of feedback. The instructional materials may be edited and modified according to the needs and requirements of the target audience. Now, some advantages of programmed learning method. The student is continually active when he is using a program. In other methods of teaching, he is active only sometimes and practically nil in a lecture. Programmed instruction is basically individual instruction. Every student proceeds at his own pace. In a conventional class, the teacher attends to only children of average abilities, with the consequences that the intelligent get bored and the dull have no extra help. But programmed instruction helps the dull with extra information where it is needed, and no stigma is attached to the making of mistakes. At the same time, it does not hold up the progress of a fast learner as he goes along and completes the task at his own pace of learning. Next, immediate reinforcement helps a child to know whether his answer is right or wrong. In normal class, feedback takes a long time. Next is, each program has to prove itself to be effective during the process of validation and must be rewritten as many times as is necessary. Next, a program is not a human being and can be used at any time of the day. Programmed materials or teaching machines are never tired and never lose their temper or patience. Hence, programmed materials are very useful in the field of non-formal education. Some limitations of programmed learning method. One is that the programmed learning does not eliminate competitions or grades as often claimed. Next, mere manipulation of machines is not rewarding to children, as Skinner seems to think. Once the novelty wears off, and if at the start too many errors appear, the pupils loses interest and motivation. Later, reinforcement often does not accelerate learning. Next, programmed instruction restricts the learner's freedom of choice, resulting in cramping of his imagination and initiative. Another, operant conditioning is found successful only with some pupils in some cases and not in all. Programmed instruction ignores or makes inadequate provisions for variables like cognitive variables, personality variables, and motivational variables. Another weakness of programmed learning is that the teacher-pupil contact, which is so vital for development of human personality and relationship, is completely lost. Next, in language learning, speech is equally important as development of reading and comprehension skills. But there is no scope for providing this experience. With this, we conclude today's topic and hope you have understood it properly. Thank you very much.